Resistance to change in the workplace seems to be lurking around every corner. But are there different types of resistance that you might experience within your workforce or with your employees? And if so, what are they? Well, I've got some perspective on this one that just might help you inspire those around you to overcome that resistance. Let's get it. I've had the privilege of working with dozens of Fortune 500 companies all over the world, working with them through change, disruption, and transformation. And I am here to tell you that resistance is real. Through this work at Change Enthusiasm Global, we've been able to identify 4 different types of resistance to change in the workplace. Did you know that by better understanding the type of resistance that an employee is embodying, you'll be better enabled and poised to mitigate that resistance? Well, by the end of this video, you're going to be armed with 4 different types and tips to mitigate each one. The first resistance type is what we call Active-Informed. Now, these are the types of individuals that once you've given them a change effort or a change initiative, they state, I fully understand the change initiative and I'm against it. And I will tell you that I'm against it. I'll openly tell those around me that I'm against it. And I'll tell you rationale as to why. And I may even present alternate, what I see as viable avenues to use as opposed to doing this particular change. This type of resistance can feel quite strong and a bit in your face. And it can also feel a bit maybe provocative in the way that it's challenging the authority, in the way that it's challenging an effort that's come down perhaps from the top of the organization. The tip to help mitigate this type of resistance is to get curious around what's driving that resistance within that individual. They've clearly shown that they understand the rationale behind the change, and they're still acting against it. They're still speaking up against it. So get curious as to why. If they're offering potential avenues to take as opposed to moving this particular change forward, strive to understand what those are. And although you might communicate that back to your own leadership and they might, reject it, at least you've taken that individual's words into account. And you can then relay, you know what, I really appreciate the pushback, but this is an effort, this is an imperative that's come down from the powers that be, that's come down from levels above myself. And hopefully that will help mitigate that individual's resistance moving through the change. Perhaps you can even invite them, I want to leverage you. I want to use you as we move through the change. Perhaps there are ways that we can optimize within the framework, within the structure that we've been given, that ultimately and unfortunately, we have no power to change. The second resistance type is the Active-Uninformed. These are the types of individuals who will say, I know there's a change happening. I don't really understand why, what the change is, or what's required of me, but I'm against it. I know there has to be many reasons why this change doesn't make sense. And I can start to pontificate and list what those reasons might be. I know that everything's fine the way that it is today, and I'm happy to chat with anyone in the hallways, over Skype, in text, over a phone call on why this change shouldn't happen and why we're better off not moving forward. The tip to help mitigate this type of resistance and inspire that individual outside of that resistance is to make sure that they have that understanding of why the change needs to happen. And that really just looks like sitting down, stating the rationale, the why behind the change, and then explicitly what's required of that individual. And really underline the fact that this is not a request. This is something that must happen, something that you and your team, and subsequently them, have been charged with doing. And so very clearly state, here's what's expected of you moving through the change. I would also just underline there's value in getting curious with these type individuals as well. Understand what's driving that resistance. You know it's not going to be anything behind the rationale of the change because they're not fully informed on what the change is. So there's something else there. Get curious on what that is. Maybe it's fatigue. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's distrust in the ability of the organization to actually successfully implement change. Understand what that is, and maybe work with that individual to brainstorm what are ways they can position themselves for success moving forward. And keep in close contact with this individual, making sure on one-to-ones when you're chatting with them, you understand how they're moving through the change and if there's anything you can do to support them. By the way, do you get jazzed like I do talking about change and emotion and resilience and resistance? Then this is the channel for you. Subscribe. Click it below, click the like, click a bell, click something, because I do videos like this all the time. When you click subscribe, you're gonna get notified every time a new video drops. So click it now and you'll be sure to get notified. All right, let's get back into it. The third type of resistance is the passive-informed. These are the individuals who say, I know there's a change happening, I'm fully aware of what I'm accountable for, what I'm responsible for, but I don't wanna do it. It's the last thing on my list. I am not happy or willing to engage in conversations. I'm going to try to keep my head down and focus on anything but doing that change because it's the last thing that I'm thinking about. Now, these are the types of individuals that might just have a natural resistant response to change, perhaps because of a prior experience, whether it be in the workplace or maybe in their personal lives. They just have a natural wall up when it comes to moving through change. I'm going to state it again. Get curious. Understand why. What's driving that resistance? Why do they feel that they don't want to engage? Why do they not feel excited about stepping into the change effort? So get curious and understand that. A couple powerful questions to ask this type of individual is, number one, what's keeping you from embracing the change? Work to understand what are those reasons, what is that barrier that's keeping them from stepping into this with a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. The second question, what is one thing that excites you about the future once this change has been completed successfully? Now, when you ask this question, make sure you give a little side note and tell them your response cannot be the fact that you don't have to think about change anymore. Okay, that's not a valid response. But ask them, what is that thing that most excites them about the future? When you can kind of focus their intentionality, focus their efforts towards what they're going to gain, what they're excited about, that's going to help motivate and inspire them through the journey. Lastly, make sure you're keeping the doors of communication open with these individuals as well, checking in on a frequent basis, how they're managing the change, anything that you can do to support them, any challenges that they might be having. They're not going to want to bring up the change initiative. They're not going to want to talk about the deliverables. So it's really going to be incumbent upon you to broach those conversations, talking about the work, understanding their progress, any challenges, any hurdles, so that you can be there to support them and ensuring that the work is getting done. The fourth and final resistance type is the passive-uninformed. This is the individual who will state, I know there's some kind of change happening, but I have no interest in understanding what, why, who, or where. My strategy is to ignore it all, to keep my head down, to avoid it at all costs, not engaging and understanding what the change is that's happening, nor what I'm responsible for. My thought is if I avoid it, then hopefully other people in the organization will make it happen and I'll never have to deal with it. Quick tip on this one, and I just might have saved the best for last. These types of individuals and getting them motivated and engaged in a change initiative can be so challenging and often frustrated because they don't have any motivation to learn about the change initiative and they have no motivation or intention to actually do the work that's required of them in making the change a success. Stating the criticality and urgency of the change initiative and specifically what's required of them in their work plan can be hugely useful with this type of individual. It's important that they're crystal clear on why the change is happening and what they're specifically responsible for, and write it in black and white. Make sure it's a part of their work plan. Make sure that it's anchored in your one-on-ones so that you can come back to, these are your deliverables, and check progress. You want to make sure that the risks of not engaging are crystal clear. If they're not delivering their work plan, if they're not meeting expectations, there's great detriment in their future, in their career, and staying with the business long term. So make sure that's crystal clear as you're stating the why and what's needed of them to move the change forward. And of course, with these individuals, you certainly want to stay close. You want to make sure that you're checking in, again, restating their expectations, making sure they're progressing against those deliverables, supporting them along the way. These are ones that you really, like I said, want to keep close, make sure that they're actually doing the work that's required of them. And as they start moving into the work plan and actually doing what is required of them, make sure you're sharing appreciation. offering gratitude, and perhaps finding things that you see excite them or find a little bit of energy in as they're doing that work. And then maybe you can help to bring that a little bit more to light as you're moving through the change journey. So if you got value from this, you're jazzed about learning about resistance to change, why employees resist, effective strategies to mitigate that, I got something else for you for free. So at Change Enthusiasm Global, we partnered with Rockstar Global Leading Research Institute called CGK, and we studied the status of change and emotion in the workplace, notably about resistance, about burnout, about emotions experienced when going through change in the workplace. And we found things that your employees are likely thinking, but not telling you. And I want to gift that to you today for free. All you got to do is click on the link below. I want to make sure you have the research, the data, and the insights to successfully fuel the growth of yourself and your business through even your greatest change challenges. I'm Cassandra Worthy, and until we meet again, keep growing and keep rocking.